I think Tyson Fury wins the fight. I mean, you know, if it was him in decline, he's going to have a tough night against Usyk. I think he's going to be too big in that fight. If he's switched on, if he trains properly, which you'd expect him to do and be, I expect him to win. But you can't rule out Oleksandr Usyk. You know, it's a tremendous heavyweight clash.
I think Usyk beats Fury. He's a better boxer. He's always performed, always showed up.
John Fury, bad behavior.
In the past you've said belts don't matter, this one's got to matter, right?
I'm coming for his heart. That's what I'm coming for. Fuck his belts. I'm coming for his fucking heart. Fuck it!
Any final words?
All his team do. Fuck the lot of them.
I don't truly believe that Tyson Fury's consigned himself in his mind to thinking, I can't outbox this guy. He's going to go in there, see how he gets on for the first 3 rounds or so before he makes the decision. At that point, that's when I think Tyson Fury starts to push the pace a lot more, starts to try and walk Oleksandr Usyk down a lot more. And I think that maybe he had some...
So from round 4 onwards? Sort of.
Yeah, from round 4 onwards.
This will be the most times in a fight Tyson Fury's chin has been hit.
It's going to be the most that Tyson Fury's body has been hit.
I might not be confident in stopping Fury. I think Usyk will drop Fury.
Yeah, I think I'd probably agree. I think there's a very high chance that both men go down.
I feel like Usyk could get him out there, but I would pick Usyk by decision.
You couldn't even put me down after being on Bambi legs. You hit me 10 shots. 10 clean shots on the chin.
Okay,
no
okay.
canvas touch.
Yeah.
You're in the rematch.
Okay.
Like Tupac said, you hit me with your best shots and couldn't do all. You know what's coming for you. I'm gonna you up.
So we're now just a matter of days away from the rematch between Oleksandr Usyk and Tyson Fury, which we will be live in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia covering from inside the stadium with the Pain Game. And the first time around, we really didn't know what to expect, did we? I think that the bookmakers did have Tyson Fury as a favourite for that one, but I feel like the reason why we didn't really know what to expect from this fight was because that neither man had boxed anyone even remotely similar to the opponent. Oleksandr Usyk had never boxed a big man like Tyson Fury. He had boxed bigger men than himself, like Daniel Dubois, maybe more fittingly Joe Joyce, Anthony Joshua, but never one with the footwork, with the ability to maneuver himself around a ring like Tyson Fury does. Tyson Fury had hardly boxed any southpaws in the pro ranks before, probably the most notable one being Otto Wallin, and we all remember what a bad night at the office it seemed that Tyson Fury had in that fight. And when he had been in fights and opponents had switched their stance to southpaw, such as Dillian Whyte at the start of their fight, or when Francis Ngannou did it, Tyson Fury did look uncomfortable. And that, coupled up with the fact that we had seen Tyson Fury struggle against smaller men like Steve Cunningham, albeit coming through, made it really, really intriguing as to how this fight would play out. And it's funny because despite it being so intriguing, I honestly don't think that I believed that this fight would end up being anywhere near as good as it did end up being. Because make no mistakes about it, this fight was a heavyweight classic. It swayed from side to side, sometimes going from being a high-level chess match to being an all-out fight. Both men were hurt at times, and both men showed great powers of recovery, not only to come through crisis moments, to then go on and have success after that. And in my opinion, despite the result and the winner of the fight, both men absolutely performed out of their skin in that first fight. And despite not all 3 scorecards being in agreement, I do think that there was nothing controversial about the decision come the end of the fight. I feel like the rightful man won. And listen, I'm a huge Tyson Fury fan. As you lot know, you give me plenty of stick in the comment section for it, and you're within your right to do so. I don't need you to agree with every single one of my opinions if it means watching my videos. I appreciate the fact that you tune into the channel anyway. But going on the comment section, I do have to fire back and say some of you can be very blinded at times by the fact that I admit that I'm a Tyson Fury fan. Some of you can be very selective in what you choose to interpret me saying, because I have never made a case for Tyson Fury winning that first fight. I've never even stated that I think that the first fight was a draw. I've always consistently said that I scored the fight 7 rounds to Oleksandr Usyk, 5 rounds to Tyson Fury. And with the 2-point round that came in the 9th for Oleksandr Usyk, that means that I had a scorecard of 115 to 112 in favour of the Ukrainian. But despite the fact that we didn't have all that much to go on when trying to work out how the first fight would play out, now that we've got 12 rounds of boxing to be able to analyse and interpret, surely it should be a little bit easier to predict this fight, shouldn't it? I'm not really too sure, if I'm honest. Looking back on the first fight in rematches isn't always the best way of being able to interpret how the second fight in that rematch will go. And we've only actually seen Oleksandr Usyk have 1 rematch as a pro, as opposed to Tyson Fury, who has had 3 rematches, 2 of those being trilogy fights. And I think that maybe you could look at Oleksandr Usyk's fight against Anthony Joshua and you could make a case to say that Oleksandr Usyk didn't actually perform as well in the rematch as he did in the initial first fight. Definitely by the judges' scorecards, you could show that Oleksandr Usyk's second fight with Anthony Joshua was closer than the first fight. However, that one was a split decision, the rematch there, and the judge that scored it by 2 rounds to Anthony Joshua does not deserve to have a job in the sport of boxing. I do not know what that judge was watching. I think the truth was, in that second fight, Anthony Joshua was a lot better than he was in the first fight. He had a better understanding of what he was going up against, and he had also tasted Usyk's power and seen that Usyk was able, in the small spurts that it happened, to take his power, and therefore he was better prepared, meaning the margin of victory was smaller. But I still scored that fight by a minimum of 4 rounds to Oleksandr Usyk. And yes, Tyson Fury has had a spectacular performance in a rematch against Deontay Wilder, a rematch that he went into as a slight betting underdog. But comparing Deontay Wilder and comparing Oleksandr Usyk is like comparing apples and oranges. They are 2 completely different fighters with 2 completely different styles. And Deontay Wilder is a man who for large parts of his career was able to navigate himself through with reliance on one specific attribute, whereas Oleksandr Usyk is a phenomenal all-rounder. And let's not forget that that wasn't an immediate rematch that Tyson Fury took with Deontay Wilder. There were 2 fights in between, and I do believe that that changes a few things. There were also 2 fights in between Tyson Fury's rematch with John McDermott. There were 7 fights in between Tyson Fury's rematch with Derek Delboy Chisora, and every single rematch that we speak about here for both Usyk and for Fury came off the back of fights that each man had won. Well, sort of. I mean, there's a lot of people that feel that John McDermott won the first 10-rounder against Tyson Fury, and I think unanimously everyone pretty much feels like a split decision draw was the wrong result in Tyson Fury's first fight with Deontay Wilder. I believe, as well as a lot of you guys probably do, that Tyson Fury deserved the nod in that one. So despite Tyson Fury's claims that he is always better in a rematch, I really do think we have to zone in on the opponents that he's facing in those rematches to be able to draw a conclusion. And my conclusion that I do draw is that I don't actually think it holds all that much relevance, because the guys that he has rematched are not anywhere near the same stratosphere as Oleksandr Usyk. Listen, I honestly don't know how this fight plays out. I don't know who wins this fight, but like everyone in the boxing world, I've got my opinions on what each man needs to do to have the best chance of winning this rematch. rematch. And Tyson Fury's come out in the build-up a few times and said that he doesn't feel like he needs to do all that much different to be able to win this rematch, apart from doing a bit less clowning around and staying a bit more switched on. And I remember in the build-up for the second Wilder fight, Tyson Fury was consistently saying that he was going to walk Wilder down and he was going to knock Wilder out. And I didn't believe him. And that is exactly what he went in there and did. And this time round, I do actually believe him. I do believe that Tyson Fury feels that with better preparation, he can close those margins that were there in favour of Oleksandr Usyk. So what does Tyson Fury need to do? And what will Tyson Fury have already done that will go in his favour in this rematch? Well, the reason I say what will he have already done is the fact that this will be his third fight in a 14-month span. And throughout Tyson Fury's career, I believe that whenever we've seen an active version of Tyson Fury, we've always seen a better version of Tyson Fury. I also believe that regardless of what Tyson Fury says in the media, deep down in his heart, he knows that he needs to be better in this second fight. And that's not just a case of avoid getting hit by that shot that rocked him to his boots in round 9, because that shot had been coming. And the reason it had been coming is because Tyson Fury had been fatiguing in the rounds leading up to that round. And when you're the size of Tyson Fury and the weight of Tyson Fury, that fatigue will naturally set in when you are boxing a smaller guy like Oleksandr Usyk, who's quick on his feet and has a high output. So the first thing that I believe Tyson Fury needs to avoid is piling on a load of weight, as some people, including Frank Warren, has suggested that he will for this rematch. Listen, he went into the Wilder rematch almost 20 pounds heavier than he went into their first fight, and clearly that worked very well for Tyson Fury. But it's horses for courses, and different styles will suit different fights, and I don't believe that being heavier will necessarily enable Tyson Fury to be more aggressive in this fight. I personally don't subscribe to the theory or the narrative that Fury needs to be consistently more aggressive in this fight. Ultimately, I think that fitness and levels of cardio are what are going to be most important for Tyson Fury in this fight, and having that level of fitness will enable him to be able to capitalize more on the moments of success that he had in that first fight. See, Usyk will often lure his opponents into a false sense of security. He stays on you, he wins the early rounds, he's chipping away at you at the same time as not going all out for a stoppage. And what that means is he is chipping away at not only your stamina, but he is depleting that gas tank. Meaning if you do have a successful period against him and you become dominant against him like Tyson Fury was in rounds 4 to 7, if Usyk can ride the storm and get through those moments, which throughout his career he always has been, he will then have a hugely fatigued opponent in front of him. So Fury needs to do his best to avoid that, and the key to avoiding that for me is being fitter. And you might tell me that Tyson Fury can never be fitter than Oleksandr Usyk, and I would agree with you. Possibly Tyson Fury can't ever be fitter than Oleksandr Usyk, but he can be fitter than Tyson Fury was in that first fight. And in doing so, I think that he can be a lot more competitive in those opening rounds. I think that he can come out and try a lot harder to take the center of the ring. When he comes out and he has that stance, I believe that Tyson Fury needs to get his hand over the top of Oleksandr Usyk's lead hand as opposed to underneath it. I can see why you would have that hand low and underneath it, and Tyson Fury feels loose and light when he does so, but having that hand over the top is going to be able to give you the opportunity to come over the top and then use your size and physical attributes against the smaller man. What I do think that Tyson Fury needs to stick with is working to the body. I think that that had a significant effect on Oleksandr Usyk, and I do think that's something something that gave him so much success. And I think that out of any fight I've seen Oleksandr Usyk in at heavyweight or at cruiserweight, that is the most that I have seen the body of the Ukrainian hit. And for the people who would disagree with me and say that the bodywork of Tyson Fury didn't have a major effect on Oleksandr Usyk, I get it. We didn't see him wince, we didn't see him go down from a body shot or anything like that, but sometimes it's what you don't see in boxing. And what we didn't see is Oleksandr Usyk's punch output stay as high in those middle rounds as they were in the opening and as they were in the closing rounds. And I do feel like the investment that Tyson Fury made into Oleksandr Usyk's body could be a contributing factor as to why that was. But again, this is where I draw back to stamina, because Tyson Fury needs to be able to go again when he lands to the body of Oleksandr Usyk. We were often seeing him circle off and move off after landing those shots, and I personally think that that was a prime opportunity for him to then take it back up to the head and have even more success. Fury needs to find a mix between being able to push Oleksandr Usyk back at times and be aggressive with him, but when he's not being aggressive, he needs to be a little bit more slick, a little bit more switched on, and definitely sharper with what's coming back at him. And before you say it, I know, easier said than done. And despite Fury being a loose side-on boxer, I do think that he needs to have a higher guard on the inside when he is close to Usyk and trading up with those shots. Because ultimately, him having low hands and not pushing Usyk back with the 4 shots that he was thrown when he was countered in that 9th round is what did the damage that Oleksandr Usyk had so much success with. My gut instinct tells me that Tyson Fury will have focused heavily on cardio during this camp. This camp will have been better for Tyson Fury regardless, because of the fact that last time out he was preparing and trying to avoid that cut opening back up so that he could make the rescheduled date. But what I'm not claiming here is that Tyson Fury was not fit in that first fight. So please don't be misled by what I'm saying. Fury was fit in the Usyk fight, and Fury's punch output in that Usyk fight was way higher than many of you might actually expect. In Fury's fight with Vladimir Klitschko, he threw 371 punches. He was around 10 pounds heavier in his first fight with Deontay Wilder, where he threw 327 punches. And I think that we would all agree that they are two of the fittest and sharpest versions of Tyson Fury that we've seen. Well, he was half a stone heavier for the Oleksandr Usyk fight than he was for that first Deontay Wilder, meaning he was well over a stone heavier for the Oleksandr Usyk fight than he was for the Vladimir Klitschko fight. And in the Oleksandr Usyk fight, Tyson Fury threw 496 punches. So the narrative around Tyson Fury not being fit is not one that I'm pushing and not one that I subscribe to, but I do think that you can have better timing. I do think that you can have better judgment, and I do think that you can be more accurate with those shots. And therefore, off of those punch stats, I realise that what I'm asking for from Tyson Fury here is a huge ask. But to achieve great things in the ring, you must achieve great things in your training. And I do believe that the levels of fitness that Fury showed in that first fight need to be upped once again in this fight. I believe that he probably needs to throw more punches in this fight, and I believe that those punches need to probably come in the form of jabs and variation of those jabs when he is having his more inactive moments, when he is circling around and going onto the back foot, which he will do at times in this fight, I believe, against Oleksandr Usyk. And despite the fact that Oleksandr Usyk is now aware of it, being aware of something and being able to get out the way of something are two different things. And I think that Tyson Fury needs to continue to throw that right hand uppercut that was having success both to head and body of Oleksandr Usyk. And by the way, Tyson Fury could do all of these things and it still might not be enough. I am just saying this is what I think gives him the best chance in the rematch. Take the centre of the ring from the opening bell and attempt to push Oleksandr Usyk back, putting shots behind that double jab and going down to the body. And if that fails, then rely on the acquired fitness that you have gained in your camp and go off of the back foot, being a lot more sharp and having a lot more answers for the shots that Usyk throws at you. When Usyk throws at you, try and level the score. Don't can't try and deflect or miss one of the shots, slip one of the shots, and then go into a showboating mode. Reply and answer to Usyk, so he knows that there will be something coming back at him at all times. And the most important thing that Fury needs to do for me here is take that risk when he gets it. Because I honestly believe that when that uppercut landed in round 6, a combination of two things happened. He had a man in front of him that had better powers of recovery and better judgment when hurt than anyone he had ever shared a boxing ring with before, and therefore he found it very hard to go for the kill. But I also feel that Tyson Fury felt that the tide had turned. I don't think he felt like that moment in round 9 or even round 8, which was a really bad one for Tyson Fury, was going to happen. I think that he thought that he had already took the best from Usyk in those opening 3 rounds, and that he had turned the tide, and he would now be able to control the fight and dictate the pace of the fight. I don't believe that Tyson Fury felt the resurgence was going to come from Oleksandr Usyk, so maybe he wasn't as frantic to capitalize on that moment as he needed to be. But now he does know that Oleksandr Usyk can hurt him, and now he does know that Oleksandr Usyk will not be afraid to do so. So if that moment does come again when Tyson Fury gets Usyk in somewhat of a crisis moment, I think that he needs to try twice as hard to be able to close the show in that moment, at least to be able to drop Oleksandr Usyk. And emptying the tank is a phrase in boxing that can sometimes work and can sometimes go massively against you. I remember Tunde Ajayi telling Anthony Yarde to empty the tank on Sergei Kovalev, and we all remember what happened in that one. But sometimes you have to roll the dice, and depending on how this fight is going, Fury will probably have to roll that dice at some point. I think that Fury at least needs to have Usyk on the canvas at some point in this fight, if not stop him. And if he does manage to drop Oleksandr Usyk and have as much success as he had at times in the first fight, then I think that margin will be able to be enough to get him a decision on the scorecards. Remember, this is hypothetical. This is me saying what I feel that Fury needs to do to win the fight. So why don't we move on to what Oleksandr Usyk needs to do? And the main question is, does Oleksandr Usyk need to even change anything? Because there's an old saying in life that if it's not broke, then you don't need to fix it. But there's also a chain of thought that would say, with the expertise and the ring IQ that Oleksandr Usyk has, with the data that he now has on Tyson Fury, will he have seen flaws that he feels can be exploited and exploited earlier on this time round? Remember, one judge gave the fight to Tyson Fury on the scorecards. Will Oleksandr Usyk be conscious of that? And will he understand that, let's say for example, this fight ends up being a closer one, such as his rematch with Anthony Joshua was, will that linger in his mind, and will he feel like he could be on the wrong end of a scorecard or a decision? I think that in that moment that Oleksandr Usyk took that uppercut and was hurt by Tyson Fury, he very much proved to us that if he wants to go on the back foot, he can use every single centimetre of that ring and avoid letting Tyson Fury get close to him. I also think that he proved that when he hurt Tyson Fury, it showed that when Tyson Fury's letting his hands go, Oleksandr Usyk is capable of timing him and hurting him. And maybe that might lead him to box with a completely different game plan this time round. Because rather than consistently trying to pressure Tyson Fury, zap Tyson Fury with that 2 steps in, 1 step back type of footwork that really makes your opponent work so hard even when they're not under a barrage of punches, maybe he could opt to box on the back foot, to use the ring, and when Tyson Fury does try to come in aggressive, to time him and back himself to come out on top in those moments. Because let's not forget, for all of the success and the aggression that Oleksandr Usyk had and was able to apply upon Tyson Fury, the shots that did the most damage were the counter punches for Oleksandr Usyk. So maybe he will look at that and feel like that is a perfect way to approach this fight. And when you look at the shots that did the most damage for Tyson Fury, they were also counter-punches when Oleksandr Usyk was coming forward. So I wouldn't write off the possibility that Oleksandr Usyk opts to box on the back foot in this one. But my gut instinct does tell me that Oleksandr Usyk will box with similar tactics. I do believe that he will try and take centre of the ring, and I do believe that he will target the body of Tyson Fury early on. And in doing so, in constantly stabbing down to that body and dropping that level, I believe it will open up the opportunity to land those backhands over the top like we saw him do first time round. And this is why it's so hard to call, because as I speak through the methods of victory in this fight for both men, I realise that there's so many different ways that both men can approach this fight. And I suppose when you look solely on punch output per round, you'd have to imagine that not only the boxing IQ of Oleksandr Usyk, but the discipline that he has shown throughout his boxing career and throughout his life, living a strict and consistent lifestyle, will give Usyk a significant edge in this fight. And therefore, I suppose it sort of draws me to my early conclusion on this one, and that is that Fury needs to hurt Usyk, and he needs to capitalise on him when he did. And in a roundabout way, I suppose that means I'm pretty much saying what every other pundit says, and that is that Tyson Fury needs to get to Usyk in this fight. However, I do believe that the approach in how he does it is different to what you're hearing from the other pundits. I think that Tyson Fury can hurt Oleksandr Usyk off of the back foot and then pounce on him. I think he can do it early. I think he can do it late. I don't think that Tyson Fury necessarily needs to storm at Oleksandr Usyk from the first round. But there's also variable ways that Oleksandr Usyk can win this fight. And should he be a favourite going into this fight? Yes, 100%. He's proven himself now. He's shown that he can take a shot well at heavyweight. Not only just against Fury, but against Del Boy, against Dubois, against AJ, and that vulnerability that we felt was there in terms of the body shot isn't one that is as clear and obvious as we thought that it might actually be. And if it was that obvious, then the body shots that Tyson Fury put on Oleksandr Usyk would have dropped him in that first fight, wouldn't they? All of that being said, I don't necessarily think that Oleksandr Usyk will just be going into this fight overly confident now because of how the first fight played out. I do think that possibly, barring the Bradis fight, Oleksandr Usyk knows that this was the toughest fight of his boxing career, and he understands that on a different day, things could have been different. I think that Tyson Fury will go into this one with vengeance on his mind, redemption and revenge on his mind. And so far in his boxing career, when we have seen Tyson Fury go in with his back against the wall as an underdog in fights, albeit against opposition that is not the same level as Oleksandr Usyk, that is when we've seen the best version of Tyson Fury. I don't know, man. I'm just honestly fascinated by this fight. I think there's so many different ways that it can go, and I can't believe, starting out where I came from, that I'm actually going to be there inside the stadium on the night, commentating live on DAZN on the night. And listen, as much as I can sort of give myself a little bit of a pat on the back and say that this comes down to hard work, everyone works hard in this industry. So I've got to shout out my boy Brian, the true Geordie, because to have an opportunity like this, to be able to watch one of my favourite fighters in the biggest fight that he will ever be involved in my opinion, is the sort of thing that dreams are made of, man. Like, these opportunities that have obviously come from his excellency Riyadh season cards, but most importantly through my involvement with Brian, are memories and things that have not only changed my life but have changed my family's life. So I'm forever grateful, man, and I need you guys to show as much support as possible by tuning in on the night and watching us live on the Pain Game. The Pain Game is linked in the description to this video. If you buy the pay-per-view, you can select us as your commentary option on the night. It's absolutely mental that I'm even saying this. It's surreal. It's unreal, but it's for real. So make sure that you are there, because in a matter of days, we fly out to Saudi Arabia to witness history being made. And when I'm out there, when I've seen the fighters up close and personal, I will put out my final prediction for this video. This was just more of a keys to victory style video, but I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I will see you all in the next one.